Hello, my name's Sam Inglis. I'm the editor-in-chief of Sound on Sound magazine, and I love a top 10. We all love a top 10. So this is my personal top 10. The top 10 really boring things that are absolutely vital in the studio. And there's a new entry at 10. It's this. What is it? Well, it's a small powered loudspeaker. It won't play loud. It's got no bass extension, it sounds rubbish, and I've only got one of them. What makes it so vital? Well, on any session that I do, this lives on the live room floor and it's permanently hooked up to the talkback on the console, even if the musicians are on headphones, because everyone's natural reaction when they get to the end of the take is to take their headphones off. And then Muggins here is behind the control room glass going, if I want to talk to them. Having talkback on a loudspeaker enables everyone to join in a proper conversation at the end of a take. It feels democratic, it feels open, it feels human, and I can fire the entire band in one go. Worth its weight in gold. And it's surprisingly heavy. There's a non-mover at 9. They say in London you're never more than 6 feet from a rat. And there's a backwards version of that law that applies in recording studios. You're always slightly too far from the nearest headphone socket. When you're setting musicians up to record them, you want to put them where they sound good, where they can see each other, not where they happen to be able to reach the headphone amp. So you're going to need some of these. Headphone extension cables. Not exciting, not sexy, but absolutely essential. However, all headphone extension cables are not created equal. Do not cheap out and buy this kind. They're crap. They will constantly cut out, your musicians will hate you. Spend the extra and get good ones with a proper lock-in connector. They will pay for themselves 1,000 times over. They won't be any more interesting. Up one place to number 8. When most of us think of recording studios, I think what comes to mind is a big fancy-ass mixing console like this one. And this is the sexy bit. Preamps, faders, EQ, buttons, knobs, LEDs, all that lovely stuff. Sexy, but if I'm honest, kind of optional these days. The bit that's absolutely vital is the bit that I'm sitting in front of, and it's also the really boring bit. It's called the master section, and it's where you can turn the speakers up and down, talk to the talent in the live room. Now, if you agree with me that this bit is optional or you haven't got space for it, you can buy a master section in a box. It looks like this. It's called a monitor controller. Is it glamorous? No. Will clients book your studio rather than someone else's because you happen to have a particularly great monitor controller? Probably not. Think you can run a studio without one? Good luck with that. Down 2 places to number 7. I think we've all got the message by now that cheap mic stands are a false economy. If you've spent hundreds or thousands of pounds on a studio microphone, you really don't want to be sat there open-mouthed in horror as it plunges to the live room floor. So over the years I've acquired quite a lot of sturdy mic stands, but on no session ever do I seem to have enough of these. Short mic stands. Now you might be thinking, short mic stands? I've got boom mic stands. They'll go low, they'll go high. Why do I need short mic stands? Well, boom mic stands are fine until you need to put a microphone right inside a kick drum or underneath a snare drum or down by the accordion player's knee, and then you need the right tool for the job. Either that or an assistant with very strong arms. There's a non-mover at 6 and I'm sitting in it. Now there are supposed to be sound acoustic reasons why control rooms should have hard floors, but personally I'm convinced that the only real reason is to allow the engineer to scoot around on a wheelie chair. But that's not actually trivial, because if you've got a large console you do need to be able to move from one end to the other. What's also not trivial is that on a busy session you could be spending a long time in this chair, 10, 12, 14 hours at a stretch, so make it a good one. up 3 places to number 5. It's a funny thing about audio interfaces that although they have all the other features you need to record a band, they never have enough headphone outputs. I don't think I've ever seen an audio interface with more than 2 headphone outputs. I don't think I've ever recorded a band with fewer than 2 musicians. So you're probably going to need one of these. Not interesting, but completely vital. Now the thing is, I know it feels like it's physically hurting your wallet to spend more than you absolutely have to on something as boring as a multi-way headphone amp, but it really is worth getting a good one. If you buy a cheap one with an external power supply, it won't go loud enough, it will distort, you won't be able to feed different mixes to different musicians, and it won't stay still. This thing must be 15 years old. It's built like a tank, and if I turn it up more than halfway, it will literally fry the drummer's head. It's been worth every penny. There's a new entry at number 4. Now you'll often find that going into the studio does strange things to musicians, and you'll often find that musicians are quite strange to start with. So what can happen is that guitarists turn up without any spare strings, or drummers don't bring a drum key, or they've somehow got through their entire career without ever having heard of moon gel. And then if something breaks at 9 o'clock on Sunday night, you're not going to be able to nip down to your local music shop and buy a spare one. And that will be the one time in the drummer's life when he manages to punch a hole in the head of his snare drum. So you need to be prepared. You need spares, spare strings, spare drum heads, spare sticks, spare batteries, all that sort of thing. They're called Breakables. Every good studio needs a stock of them, and the best thing of all, you can charge the band for them. Down 1 place to number 3, I think it's fair to say that DI boxes score fairly highly on the boring front. A good one like this costs a surprising amount of money, it doesn't make a sound, it doesn't change the sound of something you plug into it, so you might be tempted to think, I'm not going to waste my money on one of those. That's really boring. I don't need a DI box. I'm just going to plug straight into the audio interface and have done with it. And the answer to that is that it'll work until it doesn't work. And the moment where it doesn't work will inevitably be the worst possible moment. Because you do need a DI box when something's humming or buzzing. You do need a DI box when the bass player turns up with the worst amplifier known to humanity. You do need a DI box. Or 5. Down 1 place to number 2 this week is something so boring I can't illustrate it on screen. Even if you've watched every other episode with avid interest, the mere mention of this word is going to get you thinking about emptying the dishwasher. I'm talking about insurance. Because studios are not magic buildings. They burn down, they get burgled, they flood. They're also places where clients can trip over, strangle themselves in a stray mic cable and sue you. So you need insurance, and you need the right insurance. Don't assume that your home contents insurance automatically covers your home studio. If you do work for hire, it might not. And don't assume that your security arrangements are okay just because you haven't been broken into yet. If they don't meet the insurance company's requirements, they won't pay out when you do. Take insurance seriously because you don't want to experience the alternative. I sound like your mum. Before we find out this week's number 1, here's that top 10 again. In at number 10, it's a talkback speaker. Down to 9, headphone extension cables. Holding at 8, it's a monitor controller, and up to 7, short microphone stands. This week's number 6 is a studio chair, and at number 5, a headphone amp. The highest new entry this week is number 4, it's Breakables, while down 1 place to number 3 is the humble DI box. Last week's number 1 is number 2 this week, studio insurance, which can only mean we have a new number 1. Now, studios and people who run studios love to accumulate stuff. Broken stuff that you never got round to fixing. Stuff that musicians left behind and never came back for. Stuff that you got cheap because it was collection only. And when you accumulate stuff, you need space to put that stuff, and that space is called storage, and no studio in the world has enough storage. If I ever build a studio from the ground up, it's going to be 80% storage, and then I can spend my entire life on eBay and never have to record a band again. Bliss. So that's my personal top 10 boring things that every studio needs. What's in yours? Before I go, there's just time for me to tell you about one thing that's not boring at all, but completely vital for everyone involved in recording, and that's the new issue of Sound on Sound magazine. It's out now in print, in PDF, and you can read it for free on our website at soundonsound.com. Thanks for watching.